There's a kind of strength most people never learn. It's not loud, it's not reactive. It doesn't flinch when challenged or snap when misunderstood. It doesn't raise its voice to be heard. It doesn't need a crowd to feel seen. It doesn't burn bridges out of pride or collapse under pressure. It's the kind of strength that sits still when provoked, that breathes through tension, that answers with clarity, not to win, but to stay free. The Stoics called this self-mastery, a form of discipline that isn't about suppressing emotions, but about mastering the space between stimulus and response. It's what makes a person immovable not physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It's what made Marcus Aurelius unshaken as the most powerful man in the world. What helped Epictetus find peace in chains. What helped Seneca remain composed in the face of forced death. And in a world that's more reactive than ever, this form of strength isn't just admirable, it's necessary. This video isn't about clever tricks or one-liners that make you feel temporarily powerful. It's not about manipulation or false humility. It's about calm responses that arise from deep internal work. Words that don't come from the need to look strong, but from actually being strong, quietly, subtly, consistently. So here are 7 responses, but more importantly, 7 practices. 7 responses that don't just change how others see you, but how you see yourself. We begin. Number 1, you might be right. At first, this sounds like surrender, like giving up, but it's actually one of the most difficult and liberating things a person can say. Because to say this and mean it requires a detachment from ego that most people never develop. Most arguments are not about facts. They're about identity, about being seen, about being validated. And that's why most people can't let go, because to admit they might be wrong or that the other person might be right feels like death to their sense of self. But when you say calmly, you might be right, what you're doing is not admitting defeat. You're demonstrating freedom. Freedom from the need to be understood. Freedom from the urge to win. Freedom from the tug-of-war of pride. You're signaling to the other person and to yourself that your peace does not depend on being correct, that your worth is not tied to the outcome of this disagreement, that you're not seeking domination, you're seeking clarity. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove your rope from the tug-of-war altogether. And here's what happens. 9 times out of 10, the person who's arguing with you loses momentum because they expected a fight. And instead they got presence. They expected resistance. And instead they got stillness. That moment of disarmament, that's real control. And it doesn't come from pretending, it comes from actual inner work. From knowing that you don't need the last word to stand firm. Seneca once wrote, "A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be." And in conversation, your lot is not being seen as right. It's remaining aligned with your values, peace over pride, clarity over chaos. Try it next time someone challenges you, not sarcastically but sincerely. Say it with your chest, calmly, honestly, "You might be right." And walk away lighter. Number 2, that doesn't work for me. Boundaries are not a trend, they're a necessity, and this phrase, simple as it is, carries more power than most people realize. That doesn't work for me is a declaration of inner stability. It's not aggressive, it's not an attack, it's not even a negotiation, it's a statement of fact. This thing, this demand, this behavior, this request, it doesn't fit within my integrity, within my time, my values, my peace, and that's enough. Notice how many people feel the need to over-explain their no, to dress it up in apology, to shrink themselves just to soften the discomfort of others, and in doing so, they lose their own clarity, their own center. But when you say plainly, "That doesn't work for me," you're doing something rare. You're honoring yourself in real time, not later, not after it hurts, but at the moment when the decision needs to be made. You're showing the other person and yourself that you trust your instincts, that you don't need permission to protect your peace, that you don't need conflict to justify your limits. And here's the truth: people might push back, they might ask why. They might try to bend you, but the most grounded people are the ones who don't bend simply to avoid discomfort. You don't need to argue your boundary, you just need to live it. And the more you live it, the more others start to believe you, not because you threaten, but because you're consistent, not because you're loud, but because you don't waver. As Marcus Aurelius put it, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." And we could add, if it doesn't work for you, you do not owe it your time. Number 3, I don't take that personally. If there's a single phrase that can change the course of your mental life, this might be it. Most people walk through the world like exposed wires, touchy, reactive, easily triggered. They take every glance, every word, every pause as a personal statement, and they burn themselves out trying to read into things that were never about them. But the Stoic sees insult for what it is, a reflection not of who you are, but of who the other person is, their judgment, their pain, their story. When you say, "I don't take that personally," you're not pretending not to care. You're not avoiding discomfort. You're not denying the existence of insult or injustice. You're simply choosing not to absorb it. You're refusing to carry what was never yours to begin with. You're creating space between the action and your identity. You're saying, "I see what you did, I hear what you said, and I know who I am, so this doesn't stick." That's freedom. Epictetus taught this relentlessly. He reminded his students, you cannot control what others say or do. You can only control your response. And once you truly believe that, you stop collecting pain that isn't yours. You stop rehearsing old insults. You stop giving your emotional energy away to people who don't even understand you. You return to yourself, and from that place, you can respond with clarity or not respond at all, because not every insult deserves your energy. Not every jab requires a counter. Sometimes, the calmest, strongest thing you can say is, "I don't take that personally," and then carry on. Number 4, let's come back to this later. This isn't avoidance. This isn't deflection. This is restraint in its highest form. Because the truth is, not everything needs to be handled in the heat of the moment. In fact, very few things actually should be. Most people think urgency equals importance. That every disagreement, every emotional spike, every friction point has to be confronted now. But urgency is often the enemy of clarity. When your nervous system is activated, when your heart rate is up, when your voice is tight, that's not the moment to seek truth. That's the moment to pause, and that's exactly what this phrase creates. Space, breathing room, time to return to center, time to think beyond just reaction. "Let's come back to this later" says, "I'm not running, I'm not shutting you down. I'm just not available to have this conversation in its current form. You show that you're grounded, not just in what you say, but in when you say it. It's what the Stoics called temperance. The ability to govern oneself, not to be yanked by every impulse or provocation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. But truth often needs space to emerge, space that emotional heat doesn't allow. So we delay not to escape, but to prepare for a more honest exchange. It's a powerful thing to say to someone, "You matter enough for me to wait until I can respond with the best version of myself." Because strength doesn't always mean standing your ground in the storm. Sometimes it means stepping back to wait for the storm to pass, so you can see and speak more clearly. Number 5, I hear you. It sounds too simple, too soft, too easy. But when said with intention, this phrase is one of the most powerful tools of calm presence you can carry. In a world where most people are just waiting to speak, to correct, to counter, to be right, this phrase cuts through like silence in a loud room. Because it's not just about the words, it's about how you hold them. I hear you says, I'm not just tolerating you, I'm present, I'm listening, I'm not reacting, I'm not preparing a defense, I'm here, and here's the twist. When people feel heard, they stop shouting. When people feel acknowledged, they stop escalating. Most arguments are a cry to be seen, to be understood, to not be invisible. So when you say, I hear you, not sarcastically, not passively, but truly, you disrupt that cycle of escalation. You also create something else, a moment where you aren't trying to control the outcome. You're just holding space. Not giving in, not giving up, but allowing room for dignity on both sides. This is what the Stoics would call equanimity, inner calm in the face of emotional charge, and it requires discipline. Because when someone comes at you with heat, your natural response is to mirror it. But this practice interrupts that mirror reflex. It holds up a window instead. It takes maturity to listen to someone you disagree with. To say, I hear you without needing to add, but you're wrong. It takes confidence, stability, inner ground that isn't shaken by differing opinions. When you say it, mean it. Don't fake it to shut them down. Say it because you've trained yourself to value understanding over domination. And from there, real communication begins. Number 6, that's not how I see it. There's a power in quiet disagreement that most people overlook. It doesn't seek to win. It doesn't seek to dominate. It seeks to stand firm without friction, to hold your position without needing to destroy the others. When someone says something you don't agree with, especially if it's intense, irrational, or rooted in false assumptions, your instinct might be to push back hard, to go point by point, to correct, to prove, to overwhelm. But that's not always strength. Sometimes that's just insecurity wearing armor. Strength is being able to say calmly, clearly, that's not how I see it. No sarcasm, no venom, just presence. This phrase is boundary and bridge at once. It says, I have my truth, and I'm not abandoning it, but I also don't need to erase yours to feel safe. It's a line that invites respect, because it models how to disagree without turning people into enemies, and it forces the other person to realize you're not a wall, but you're not a doormat either. You are clear. The Stoics didn't seek to change people's minds through force. They led by example, by living in such a way that others felt the quiet gravity of their clarity. That's what this phrase offers, not confrontation, but self-possession. You don't owe anyone your agreement. You don't owe anyone your silence either. What you owe to yourself is clarity and calmness, and this phrase delivers both. Number 7, thank you for letting me know. This one is the quietest, and yet perhaps the most disarming of all. You'll hear this and think, wait, that's it? But it's not the words, it's the posture underneath them. It's what they don't carry. No sarcasm, no defense, no anger, just poise, just clarity, just composure under fire, because here's the truth. Most people are waiting for a reaction. When they criticize you, correct you, insult you, or challenge you, it's not always because they want truth. Sometimes they want a spark, a flare, a counterattack. But when you respond with, "Thank you for letting me know," you do something they didn't plan for. You stay still. And stillness in that moment feels like gravity. It feels like power. You're not agreeing. You're not submitting. You're not even debating. You're just acknowledging that they spoke and that you don't owe them your peace in return. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." Meaning, no one can make you react. They can provoke, but the reaction, that's yours entirely. And sometimes the most powerful response isn't silence, it's grace. It's the kind of grace that says, "I see what you're doing, I've heard your words, and I choose not to join you in the chaos." "Thank you for letting me know" is a shield, not because it deflects, but because it absorbs without damage. It lets the wave crash without pulling you into the tide. Try it. The next time someone criticizes you, or speaks down to you, or corrects you in a way that's more ego than truth, say it, "Thank you for letting me know." And then do the most powerful thing of all, move on. So what do all these responses have in common? They're calm, they're minimal, but they carry weight, because they don't come from cleverness, they come from inner preparation, from real emotional discipline. The kind that isn't built overnight, but through years of watching yourself, learning your patterns, and training your nervous system to stay steady when life tries to shake it. And the more you use these, the more natural they become. Until they're not tools anymore, they're habits, then instincts, then identity. You become the person who doesn't flinch, who doesn't bite, who doesn't chase arguments or scramble for validation. You become the calm presence in a room full of noise, the person whose silence commands more respect than someone else's volume. That's the Stoic ideal, not to conquer others, but to conquer yourself. Because when you stop reacting, you start choosing. And the power to choose how you speak, how you respond, how you hold yourself in any situation is the most durable power you'll ever have. Every time you speak with presence, you remind yourself who you are, and that is strength no one can take.